So, welcome everyone to Being at Home with George. And this is a program that I put together to help people in the time of the COVID-19 situation. And I'm giving a special shout out to the students at the King School in Connecticut. And I'd like to offer them something to help them in this time of COVID. And one of the things I think is important is this idea of how to be at home. And when I talk about being at home, I mean being where the heart is. And so home is where the heart is. And the idea is in this time, how do we spend time? How do we use this time in a mindful, reflective way where we're spending a lot of time at home with family and we might be experiencing the stress like everyone else is experiencing to try to stay safe and healthy, but also having cabin fever, being stuck with parents and children, and being like on top of each other on some level. So we have this opportunity to really get intimate with ourselves, really get clear about how are we managing this time so that we're actually using this time to go inside and to self-reflect and to think about how can I just learn how to just be mindful, to be able to just sit and be still when I get kind of overwhelmed or when I feel restless or just you might even feel good. It's a good time to just practice, be still and know it. Just sit and just be in your body and just breathe deeply from the belly and just practice being in the moment. Practice just being in the body and being mindful of how we're feeling and actually creating some space between stimulus and response so we're not reacting to everything, especially when we get frustrated with ourselves or the fact that I'm an athlete and I can't train, or I'm in the school band, or I just like school, I like interacting with my friends, and now I'm not able to do that, and I don't really know when I'm going to be able to do that. So how we use this time now is really important in terms of being able to reflect and think positively about what we can be doing now that will help us when we get back to school, when we get back to our training, when we get back to our band or whatever it is we're engaged in, our studies, we can hit the ground running. And how we do that is we learn how to be with ourselves and to really just think and just reflect on who we are being and how do I stay positive in this time. There's opportunities here, especially the opportunity to go inside and just to think about, what do I want to do and who do I need to be to do what I want to do. It's just really that simple. But this idea of mindfulness or mirror mind or being able to observe experience from this relaxed receptivity where I'm allowing things to speak to me and I can just be there in this relaxed receptivity, in this ease, and just be aware of mostly how I'm reacting or responding to things. And when I think of responding, that means that there's space where we can see what's happening. And in that space, we can ask, what's the right choice or what's the proper response to what is being offered, whether it's just extra time or someone being a little frustrated and us not reacting to their frustration, but being able to have a little compassion and have some space on it and not reacting to it, and maybe even counting to 10 before we react. Just anything, or just sitting quietly with our eyes open or closed and just sitting and breathing and just feeling the body as we breathe in and breathe out, feeling the belly expanding, contracting. We can have our eyes open, but it's just settling in the breath, settling in the body. So my first foray into teaching people how to be still and know, or mindfulness, or developing the mind to enhance performance, but also to enhance our quality of life. It was when I was working with the Chicago Bulls back in 1993. And it's interesting that pretty soon they're going to be showing the Chicago Bulls in 1998 in a series called The Last Dance. And so it reminds me of what it was like when I first engaged the Bulls and was teaching them the same concepts of how to be mindful, how to be in the moment, how to be able to reflect on experience before, during, and after so that we can enhance our performance and we learn from our mistakes. But really, it helps with really elevating performance. And even in that time, when I went to meet with them in 1993, they were in full blown crisis because Michael Jordan had retired. And I offered this idea of there's a crisis, just like now there's a crisis. And in a crisis, there's two meanings. One is danger, which we get that. The other one is opportunity. And so it's similar to this COVID crisis because the challenge is how do we hold the hurt and the hope when there's a situation and we can at least create enough space to really reflect on what's going on, accepting what's going on, and then making wise choices of how can we respond to this situation in a way that empowers us, that allows us to express our latent abilities, that we can actually come out of this time in a way where we actually have grown and we've evolved and we actually come back better than we were before this happened. And so even though something happens, we can relate to it in a way where we actually are empowered to take our game or take our quality of life to the next level. So I'm fond of saying to be a mindful athlete or be a mindful parent or a mindful executive or mindful teacher or coach, you have to be a mindful person. And so this habit of mind of being in the moment, paying attention to how we're feeling, our attitude, being clear about what our intentions are, what are we trying to do, and what's the best way to do it, and are we being helpful? Are we doing things that are workable for ourselves and others? So you want to get into the habit of doing that all the time. So when you go into your sport, it's just a matter of wherever you go, there you are. So if you have habits of mind that are consistent with being in the moment and being clear about what our goals are and being able to get the immediate feedback and adjust to that immediate feedback, we find ourselves in a little bit of a flow situation where we're just flowing with things. And so whether we're playing a sport or just being at home with ourselves or with our loved ones or engaging even through social media with other folks, we're able to be present and we're able to really be able to hear what's being said and see things that's being offered in a way where we make wise choices and where we can express ourselves in that context. So as a person or as an athlete or a student athlete, or if you're a pro athlete, you still have to go home to your family. You still have to engage with your community. So you have to get into that mindset where there's no distinction between work and play, um, uh, you know, uh, play or leisure, love or leisure. All of these things can be a piece, one piece of experience where we're just flowing and being who we are being, no matter what we're doing, whether it's work, love, or play. So that love and play is indistinguishable, or work and leisure. There's no distinction because we're bringing the same quality of mind, the same openness of heart to the experience. How do we bring that all back to now? So it's interesting that I ended up working with Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls when I used to watch them, especially Jordan perform throughout his career. I came up with this idea. He's like the eye of the hurricane. The more stressful things got, the more calm he got. And so I use this metaphor, eye of the hurricane. And we have access to that. We have this ability in the most stressful times like these times, we can actually we can get connected with that silence within, that masterpiece within, which allows us, like the eye of the hurricane, to be in the middle of the turmoil, but there's blue sky. And that when we come out of that space, we're able to perform. And I would say that we actually use this crisis not as a roadblock, but as a stepping stone to move to higher levels of wellness and performance simply by embracing it and making choices. Well, how do I want to be? Or what's the best thing to do? What is life teaching me here? So that we have this growth mindset that allows us to see it as an opportunity, not just as danger. So as I say, you got to hold the danger, but then there's opportunity. You got to hold the hurt and the hope. And so even though we hold them both, we are hopeful. And when we decide that the universe is a friendly place, then we get in alignment with how things work. And how things work is you got to show up And when you show up, you know what to do. When you see things clearly, there's a knowing that there's a wisdom there that can express itself in that knowing. And I don't know how it will manifest. I just know that that will happen. And so Michael Jordan was the epitome of that. And I'm excited about The Last Dance coming out in a couple of days. And hopefully that experience will be shared with millions of folks of how to be in this crisis or any time, but especially when things are very stressful, when you're in that, championship game where you're in that last shot and you're willing to take the shot, but you have to train for that. You don't just get there. You get there through the commitment and the hard work and the hope. So you go through the hurt of training and being and working with making mistakes, but then the hope is if you have enough hope, you'll get through it. And not only will you get through it, you'll benefit from it because when you get on that other side of the hurt, it's just much more pleasurable.